Hey you, I'm the Queen of Shade. Welcome to the interview. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and hit my Cash App to support your favorite content creator. Now let's get to the interview. Mwah.
Queen of Shade. Let me tell you something. You're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. Said you're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. You're a bougie bitch and your mama is too. Said you're a bougie bitch and your mama is too.
Salutations to foes. This is your fabulous leader, the Queen of Shade, coming to you with another special presentation. This one is a solo monologue again, entitled Grapes on the Vine. I want to talk to you today about my family history. You're going to hear some things that are unsavory, some things that are going to make you cringe, but it is in an effort to share so that others going through it can change, and so that the people that went through it can heal, hearing it, myself included. I want to talk to you about my great, great, great grandfather to start. My grandmother has been telling me the secrets of my family history. And I say secrets because a lot of people in the family don't want to discuss it. A lot of them are older and they don't want to relive traumatic experiences. But my grandmother has been filling me in on family history. My grandmother, the Queen Mother, the Duchess of Slay. I have to say that. That's her. But she's been filling me in on my family history. And I want to start with my great, great, great grandfather. On both sides of my family, my great, great, great grandfathers are white men, Caucasian men. And my grandmothers are the African women that they took unto them. My great, great, great grandfather on my mother's side is the one that I want to discuss with you today. I learned today that this man took my great, great, great grandmother to be his wife when she was 14 years of age. I learned that he was a very mean man, a very cruel man. And I learned some unsavory things about his plantation practices. I learned today that my great, great, great grandfather, when my grandfather came along, used to make him dance and perform for his fellow slave master sharecropper friends. I learned that my grandfather hated to do this and that he was often punished when he didn't want to comply. I also learned that my great, great, great grandfather, though my grandfather was his blood and his kin, treated him like he was a slave, called him a nigger boy, and said, "You get in here and you dance for my friends." I learned that the dancing wasn't the only thing that he was required to do. I learned that he was sexually assaulted religiously and repeatedly by his great, great grandfather, great, great, great grandfather, mine, but by his great, great grandfather. And I realized that that went on for a very long time. Not only him, but my great, great, great grandfather's friends also entertained themselves by using my grandfather for their pleasure, their comedy, and their sex toy. I learned I learned about the abuse. I learned about the trauma. And I also learned that my grandfather was the one who was quiet and reserved to himself. And he was chosen because he wouldn't tell anyone. But it was later allocated to me that he wasn't the only one that went through these things. It was also his brothers and sisters. Eventually, 20 years into the marriage, my great-great-great-grandfather died. And my grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother, being 14 when she married him, when he forced her to marry him, to bear his children. We don't even really know if that was a real marriage, mind you. He just took her to himself when she was 14. Let's tell the truth. But after his death, she moved north with her children. Must have been a very difficult time, especially for a beautiful Black woman. My grandfather was born in the 40s, so think when this is going on, the 20s and early teens. But she managed to move to the north. Women didn't have rights then. Women didn't have power then. The only thing she could do was get under another man. And she did things to make sure her children would be able to survive and eat. And I'm not ashamed of her, nor should anybody else be, because she fed her children and raised them to maturity. Just when my grandfather thought that those heinous acts against him and his siblings were over, with the death of their grandfather, he moved north and met another man, this time a Black man, whom would come and get him, take him under a bridge, and rape him repeatedly. My grandfather didn't have it easy. After these series of events, my grandfather met my grandmother. He was older than her. Her mother had died. She was pregnant with his first child at 17. Little did she know that my grandfather, because of what he went through, was a severely damaged man. And studies show that when young people and children are taught certain things, even if they're not taught directly, they pick up certain things that happen to them and they project them on others. And they truly believe this is the way it is and should be because that's what they were taught. I want you to understand that there are some really poor teachers in this world. They teach the worst sorts of information in the worst possible ways. My grandfather got with my grandmother. They had 5 children. He was never present for the birth of a single child. He was very wild sexually. He ran around, not just with women, but with transsexuals. There was a lot in his lineage. My grandfather ended up molesting 3 of his children. He didn't molest me, but as a baby, he had this ritual where he liked to break the souls and the spirits of people, children included. It's what was done to him by his great-great-grandfather. He used to sit me at a bowl when my mother lived with him and she had me. He used to sit me at the table with a bowl of peas. I hated peas at that time. I was a young kid, young, very young. We're talking 4. I hated peas. He would put a bowl of peas in front of me every day and tell me that I couldn't leave the table to go to the bathroom or anything until I ate every pea in that bowl. He tried to break my will. But every day I sat at that table and fell asleep until my mother would come in the house in the evening. And she would yell at him, "Dad, why do you do this?" And she would take me and relieve me from the table, take me upstairs, put me to bed. And then when she left in the mornings, he would come and get me, take me back to the table, open a fresh can of peas, sit them in front of me in a bowl, and demand that I eat them. And that I could not get up from the table until I did. As an adult, I've learned to enjoy peas. But all of my adolescence and my childhood, I wouldn't eat a pea to save my life. What the world does not know is that, yes, he molested 3 of his children. But my mother was one of them. And he carried on an adult relationship with my mother. He was sleeping with my mother. I was not the first child that my mother was pregnant with. There was one before me, because see, I'm the oldest, but there was one before me. My grandmother told me of how she was summoned to the hospital for my mother. My mother was old enough so they wouldn't tell her exactly what it was. But my grandmother later found out she was there for an abortion. She was aborting the baby, of which her father was father too. This sexual relationship between my mother and her father carried on for years. Years. And I learned in therapy that women, when they can't cope with sexual abuse, they usually turn to substance abuse. I understand why my mother did drugs for 25 years consecutively straight in my life. I understand why she wasn't there. Neither was my father. My grandmother hated my grandfather. She wanted to see him dead because of what he did to his son and 2 daughters. It was never discussed. But I need you to understand, my grandfather didn't get the therapy that he needed. And then he perpetuated the cycle. And then my aunts and uncles didn't get the therapy that they needed. It was a terrible, terrible ordeal. I lost my mother because of it. And my father was never really in the picture. Both parents had mental illness of some shape or form. In my family lineage, there is a lot of pain. I turned 8 years old and I'm molested by an aunt-in-law. Then I go to spend the summer at my grandmother's sister's house, so my great aunt. And then I am later molested, well, raped by the woman, molested by the man. I am assaulted there. And the craziest thing about it was, like I said, children pick up so many things, even when they're not supposed to. We absorb. He was a very passionate man. He paid attention to detail, to my body, and things like that, of that nature. I pay attention to detail on my men's bodies. I pay close attention. I learned how to do it. He praised me. I praise my guys often. Thank God they're all of age and that I don't see nor feel nor get aroused at taking the innocence of children. I am not a child molester. I come along and I fall in love with my best friend in kindergarten. He was a good young man, or a good kid at first. Our mothers were friends, close friends. They dressed us the same, cut our hair the same. We were the brothers that we needed. We were put together to be brothers, as our mothers were sisters. Little did I know, as we grew up from kindergarten till 10 years of age, I was systematically beaten up and abused by that friend badly. But it didn't end there. I remember the boys in the neighborhood. I was only 10. They had grown up with me, and then some were older. I've never shared this with anyone, not even my therapist. But they would come to my rescue and beat him up, bully him, and chase him off, and say to me, if he ever puts his hand on you again, you let us know. The boys in the neighborhood did that for me. But the trauma was short-lived because they had gotten rid of one monster to take his place. The boys were older than me. I remember being outside and wanting to be a part of the group, not really being a part of the group because of my effeminacy. But they would always, in a very joking manner, and I'm talking about the teenagers, pull out their dicks, shake them in my face in front of all of their friends, and laugh at the ordeal. They were all very sexually interested in me. And this behavior went on for quite some time. They were protecting me from him, but who was to protect me from them and what they wanted to do to me sexually? And you don't see a flaw in the Black community? Black people, you want to blame gays? Your sons are sleeping with homosexuals. Your sons are sleeping with transgendered women and men. We are their fantasies. You may not know it, but we do. So before anything could really happen sexually, the divine moved me out of that ghetto. And I was moved into the suburbs of my city, where the physical bullying stopped. I no longer had to worry about that. But the verbal and emotional abuse continued. There was one Black kid whom at the time I did not know. My sister was experiencing her own traumas sexually. He had been sleeping with my sister, never made passes at me, but always wanted to use his fist to speak with me. And I couldn't understand because my aunt and his mother had become friends. And once again, they were placing us together to look out for each other. And he was beating me up until I had a new best friend. And that best friend was a football player from the city. And he looked out for me. And the abuse of that young man stopped. But you know what the irony of that is? I disappeared even in the suburbs. He didn't know where I was until I was grown and had returned home from a sordid college experience where I found out I was mentally ill and needed to come home to learn how to handle my mental illness and seek treatment. I was working a job and someone from a neighboring suburb was working with me that knew him. And she was talking about me out loud to him because I was always noteworthy. People always mentioned my extravagance, my eccentricity, my otherworldliness, my beauty, even as a boy, my femininity, and my comedy. I don't do too much comedy these days. But he heard my name, and then he came and sought me out. And the boy that I ended up or started off fighting with and watched him run through the girls became my fuck buddy as an adult. And you don't see the issues with the Black community, especially the Black male. What you need to understand is there are so many young Black men out here hurting because they have been molested and raped and sexually assaulted by men in the community that are supposed to watch and protect them. They're not being protected. They're being exploited. The scars that I carry run deep. You don't know what I've been through to sit here and discuss it with you. Now, I have told you some heinous things, but I want to add a log on the fire and change your perspective. Yes, my grandfather did some heinous things. Yes, some heinous things were done to me. But do these young men deserve to go to hell when their lives cause them to suffer rape, molestation, and abuse? They just perpetuated a cycle. They just did what was done to them. I learned in therapy that many times people are so accusatory and they look at the what's instead of asking the whys. As I stated to my grandmother today, my grandfather deserves to go to hell for what he did to his children and me. But look at the monster that he was created to be. My great, great, great grandfather, a white slave owner and master, used my grandfather in a series of buck breaking exercises. Him and his Caucasian friends and counterparts. I can only imagine the heinous rapes that occurred to my grandfather. I can only imagine. And these things are being still perpetuated in the community of Black and brown people. I want to share something with you that my friend and sister taught me about me the other night. Actress and professional boxing judge, Cassandra Lewis. She taught me that, baby, I am beautiful. And attraction is attraction. Attraction has nothing to do with gender. If you're sexy, then you're sexy all the way around, and everyone will see it. My friends have also said to me, you attract all men. This is true. They're not all gay, straight, in the closet, DL, bisexual. I just attract men, period. They like who I am outside of a wig. For some of them, this just ups their fantasy for me. But this is something I do for me. But they like me. And the sad thing about the entire story that I'm telling you is that these men didn't have therapy in the 1940s and 30s and 20s. Wasn't no therapy for a Black man. Civil rights didn't happen to the 60s. And we're still dealing with it today. I can't breathe. We're still dealing with it today. Still being shot and killed. Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin. It's still open season on Black people. They could make laws and pass legislation to protect Asian Americans, but not a single law has been passed to protect us in this dispensation of time. We need to revisit the law books and legislation and make changes. You don't understand why the ghetto is so fierce. You don't understand why the ghetto is killing each other. I do. Because of all the heinous things being done to them. So I ask you, these people, my grandfather, does he really deserve to be put behind bars? When all that happened to him, and all he's doing is what he was taught. Mental illness exists there. How do you think I got it? It's not an excuse, but the man is damaged goods. The man is broken. A lot of Black men are broken. The reason I am here is to shed light on the things that Black and brown men don't want to talk about. What they don't want to tell others, I don't have to force out of them. This anointing and my office makes them feel insanely comfortable. And they tell me their stories and their troubles. Black men, I know you won't talk about it. I know you won't discuss it. Black women, I know you feel ashamed, belittled, made to feel like you are less than. But we've got to discuss healing techniques for the entire community. I stayed away from the Black community for so long because of all of the traumas that I had suffered at the hands of men and women. But I'll let you know something. I don't trust any other community. Because at least I know your traumas. At least your traumas look like mine. And if I could get help, then perhaps you could watch this video. Realize that you need to talk to someone and start opening up about the traumas that you have suffered and why you like what you like. I learned something as a phone sex agent back in 2008. We were required to do a psychological evaluation and study into the minds of men. And we learned that once trauma is introduced into the mind and the life of a man or a woman, some small part of them starts to crave it and accept it as normal. They begin to desire it. And then people like me with beautiful voices, not afraid to say, fuck me, fuck you, dick, ass, sex, screwing, come on these lines. They could talk to us about it. These fetishes for pain, demoralization, a want to give up power, stem from all of this abuse. And Black men are not the only ones. This is happening in every culture. We need real healing in this world. And I am here, and others like me, to not only start the process, but to complete the process. I know that my Black men don't feel comfortable talking about what has happened to them sexually at the hands of other men. But I know that it is what fuels your anger. Crazy thing is, even with the trans community, Black men like the trans community. It is a fetish. It is a desire. They don't want to just destroy trans lives. They become so obsessed when they meet transgender, beautiful men and women that the violence enters in because they don't want you to go to anyone else. They become insanely possessive and territorial, and they can't fathom their object being with someone else. So then they kill, hurt, and maim to protect what they want to control and have at their sexual disposal anytime that they want it. Pain, people. Pain. I learned a long time ago that if a man wanted to fight me, it was because he had some lingering feeling inside and he actually liked me. That feeling has saved my life. There are many men I have been able to avoid their violence because their violence was actually them trying to express a morbid version of love. These things are so unsavory. These things are so sad. These things destroy lives. Each and every child that my grandfather molested or raped, their lives are in shambles today, and they're in their 50s. One is dead. It was unfortunate, but I am here to offer even healing to my family. I'm saying I understand. Doesn't mean I'm going to become your best buddy. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be in close quarters with you. But I can offer you help through this screen. That way it protects me and it protects you. You can safely speak of what you need to speak about. I can hear you, give you the understanding that you need, and go on about my day. And so can you. We need to heal today, people. I've had 15 years of healing. I'm not done, but 15 years of healing and treatment. And you know, the best part of the story today was that my grandmother, the Duchess of Slay, Queen Mother, said to me, she no longer hates her first husband for what he did to their children and her. She felt mercy and forgiveness and love and care and concern because she realized that through my words, as we discussed, he had suffered some of the most heinous things a man could ever experience. Many of you men and women have experienced similar things to my grandfather and me and my grandmother and my uncles and aunts, my siblings. But there is hope for you. There is help for you. There is forgiveness for you when we understand what you went through. These men don't belong behind bars. Why? As I said to my grandmother, these men do not deserve to burn in hell. Why? You see, my God is different than yours. Because my God looks at what they went through and what they perpetuated. And it's the same for you. When you learn something positive, you implement it into your life. You apply it. It's the same with negativity. It's the same with abuse. They applied it and integrated it into their lives, but they were taught, just like I'm teaching you now, and you are implementing the change. These are the grapes that hang low on the vines in the Black community. The Black community is so broken. There have been a lot of buck breaking in our community. There have been a lot of our women raped and tortured. Our men too. There are a lot of men that thought that a man could never be raped, that he could never be violated or taken advantage of. I'm here to let you know. Yes, he can. Take what I've said to you about my own story and my own family story and think about your own. And before you pass judgment on my clan, look at yours. You've got some deeply hidden secrets that you don't want to tell everybody, anybody. But sweetheart, until you do, you will be a slave to your secrets. I'm not a slave to my family's secrets anymore. Don't judge my family, even if I don't get along with all of them, even if you don't see me singing Kumbaya and hanging out with them or giving them millions of dollars, though I will live in a very beautiful chateau. You can't judge what you don't understand. Work on your own life. Work on your own trauma. Fix yourself. Because every single person under the sound of my voice needs healing. Even those that have committed some of the most egregious acts against humanity. Monsters are not born. Monsters are made by years and years of systematic abuse, torture, and pain. I thank God that my taste, though being molested and raped in the same year at 8 years old, I'm so thankful that my sexual taste does not run to that of underaged entities. The men that I go after are adults. And I can only say that that is possible because I talked about the trauma. I got the tools to heal, and I was able to direct my life and attractions to the things that were proper for me to be attracted to. You've got to fix yourselves. If you don't, you will end up doing the same things that were done to you. And I don't want to see that for you, because this world punishes the what and forgets about the whys. These are the grapes that hang low on the vine.
So did you enjoy? I hope you did. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and don't forget to cash at me at the Queen of Shade. I am your favorite content creator, right? Right. You want to see more of this content, right? Right. Cash at me. I love you. Mwah.
I've got my black stilettos on. Don't you make me take them off. I'm assuming first position. Gonna show you I'm a boss. I've been given 60 seconds just to put my thing down. I'll have you wanting my stilettos by the time I turn around. Turn that TV down.